Right. So, part two of the John Toll interview. Now, as we were transitioning into the Rumble portion of this section, we started to talk about Pit Boss 2000, One Life Crew, all
Yep.
that goodness. Tell me,
I've got
sir, how you got
a
involved with these musical projects.
um God, I started the first I played guitar in my room by myself from the age of 18 to 24. And then I joined my first band, um, which was Suppressed Aggression, and that turned into Lockjaw 44. And then from Lockjaw 44, I had an opportunity to join One Life Crew. And then from One Life Crew, we did Pit Boss 2000, and then Ringworm, and then through it all, Point of Recognition, PC Death Squad, and coolest thing aside from being in Ringworm, which is pretty. I got to play guitar. I got to play bass for Internal Affairs for one show. That was awesome.
Wow.
And yeah, and it got to do backgrounds on what is that? What's that Terror album? One with the Underdogs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I got to do backgrounds on that album, and so that was pretty cool. So that's
Very
pretty much
cool. Now,
all the music that I've done.
what is the project that you are probably the most proud of? You said you
Oh,
are Pit Boss 2000. Was Pit Boss 2000 just a I mean, because we when I was in the military, we used to listen to all that like hardcore. Like I had a good friend from Boston. His name was Ed Churchill, and he was always turning me on to good stuff. He was like, "Yeah, I got One Life Crew, and I got Pit Boss 2000," and like we would
that's awesome.
always I mean, we were not straight edge, and I know some of those projects probably were straight edge, and some of them weren't, and whatnot.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you feel like you're the most proud of?
Being in Ringworm, probably. That's the
How
pinnacle.
many how which albums did you play on?
I didn't play on a single one. I was out of the band before they did that 2 song for that comp. So in our lineup was it was me, Blaze from One Life Crew, Three Gun, Furnace, and Chris Dora was on drums.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so it's like I was in Ringworm with Frank. Frank was in Pit Boss with me, and it's just kind of fun.
Nice. That is,
Yeah,
dude, that is so awesome because that blows my mind. Like I knew you were in One Life Crew, but I didn't really know the whole history of your hardcore trajectory. And I mean, those are some bands that I just grew up loving. I mean, Ringworm, I will say Justice Replaced by Revenge is some of the best material that they probably ever put out. And I
it's
love it.
phenomenal.
And I mean, Terror. I grew up with Terror. Got to play with them on their One with the Underdogs tour, and it's so incredible because all this music has influenced me, and it's so cool to be able to meet people that were collaborating with those projects.
I mean, it's I would I would attribute it to growing up in the Bay Area with all of those awesome local bands having a crossover scene and being able to experience hardcore punk and metal, not only in the Bay Area, but to go to Sacramento, to go to LA, to go to San Diego, and to feel, I know what it feels like to be um, at Social Distortion in 1990 in a room with 200 people. You
Wow.
know, I saw Davey Havoc reading poetry to a crowd on a Thursday night in front of, I don't know, 75 people at Gilman.
Wow.
MDC with Matt Freeman on bass.
Oh, and Dave
Um,
Dichter.
yeah, I mean, and
A lot
and
of
to
those
be a
guys live in
huge,
Charlotte now.
oh, that's awesome. I love MDC. I mean, as far as growing up and being a low, I mean, again, they made that DRI Texas to the Bay Area trek, and I always
Yeah,
thought
yeah.
that was cool. And then that's why I have so much respect for Texas bands, because it's like Texas was the birthplace of DRI, was the birthplace of MDC. And so it's like now it's like being friends with like Will to Live. I know
But I
dudes
thought
for an
Texas is the
MOD,
reason emo kids suck.
and then that's true. Um, you know, uh, and that's yeah.
And so does the Rumsky
It's so funny.
label.
Yeah, but it's so funny to be like in a conversation and have one of your dumb songs get thrown back on you. And you're like, oh fuck, I totally stepped into that.
I love it, man. I love it. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I almost consider Cleveland hardcore because I made like such good friends with some of those guys in the area. Don Foose, I don't know if you know
Sure.
John Marino.
That name does not ring a bell for me. What was
Okay,
he
so
what was
he
he
was in a
involved in?
band called Outcry. I talked to a lot of people. And I didn't know that you were in Point of Recognition. I
Yeah,
love that band. That band was awesome. They were you in that when they put their records out on Facedown?
I was one of the people who wrote Day of Defeat,
What,
which
dude?
had its 15th year anniversary June 4th.
Oh man, that like
Yeah.
holding on by a thread song. Oh man, that's punchy. I can't remember if it's on that album or if it was on one of the later albums.
It might have been. You know what? I'd have to go back and check the track listing. It might have been on one of the albums before I joined.
Okay,
Well,
that
dude,
is
it's like when I joined Point of Recognition, Tim Lambesis from As They Lay Dying and Jordan from As They Lay Dying were our guitar and drummer, or drummer and guitar.
what.
Yeah, so
That
awesome,
is wild.
so cool.
What do you what do you think about everything that transpired with him?
Uh, with Tim,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it sucks that when I moved to San Diego and I didn't have a place to live, I got to crash at his house for a week, and will never forget that outpouring and that opportunity to get myself established in San Diego when I moved there. And then fast forward being in a band with him, and then him going off to this amazing level with As They Lay Dying, and what's the Arnold Schwarzenegger Austrian Death Machine.
Austrian Death Machine.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love it. I mean, it's great. And so to see him get caught up in the legal system like he did was unfortunate. And what was even worse was to see all of the piling on and all the hatred that he got. And I always thought it sucked and was undeserved. And so now the fact that he's doing the Austrian Death Machine again. He's got, what is he? Is it Born of Fire? Is that his? Do you know if that's his new
I thought
band?
he was back in As LA Dying.
And well, they're also doing As They Lay Dying, but he's also doing this third project. So it's like it's awesome to see that he went through this he had his early part of his career, he had this hiatus, and now he's back, and it's going to be cool to see what he creates because the stuff he's already put out is awesome.
Yeah, I will say that I don't know much about the whole situation from his perspective and from his whole story. It made it sound like he was set up.
I mean, the system is not there for us. The system is there for the system. It's a money making apparatus. And unfortunately, the data that they have on who is going to be incarcerated, they know by your second or third grade how you're doing in school, whether or not you're going to be headed into the system.
Wow.
And so now you see the reason why the schools are so bad and won't be improved. Well, you see why school choice is fought so hard against, because what you're ultimately doing by improving education is you're eliminating that process of sending people off to state facilities or federal facilities, which is a
Well,
business in itself, which is slavery in itself.
now let's talk on that a little bit. I mean, do you do you feel like there's any place for the public education system whatsoever? Because me
Absolutely.
personally, as oh really? Okay. See, me as a
Yeah.
taxpayer, I feel that I don't have any children,
I
and
don't.
I fundamentally disagree that I know of, and I fundamentally disagree with the way that they're indoctrinating these students. And I feel as a taxpayer, I shouldn't be obligated to pay taxes for a system that I disagree with, at least that I have no investment in, if that makes any
Right.
sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense. In the same way that I don't believe we should be at war. So why is our tax money going to fund a war? Why is our tax money going to fund indoctrination? Why is our tax money going to fund, infanticide? It's going to fund the implementation of assisted suicide. It's anti-human in its endeavor because it's corporate owned and run, and a corporation by its very definition is a psychopath.
God. Just the shit that they are, you know, filling these kids' heads with. And I don't know how you feel about TikTok. I just feel like TikTok is just a cesspool of uh bad ideas. uh like the whole trans agenda. There shouldn't be 2 3-year-old 4-year-old kids that are wanting to be an opposite gender. I think that's just
Right.
madness, and it's insane, and it's just like a byproduct of, like we were talking about earlier, the times that we're living in, this godlessness, this whole uh madness and insanity.
Right. So with the you had a nation that was created based on human sovereignty, based on faith, and based on nationhood and patriotism, and that was a certain mode of thinking. And unfortunately, like we were talking about early on the other stream, that now with corporations and the government being one and the same, the corporations own the government, they're doing the bidding of it. And so in this indoctrination, in this agenda that's being put out, what you're experiencing is the 1% owns these companies that own our government. The 1% has taken a percent smaller than the 1%. So what was, because I growing up, there was like, if you were in the LGBTQ Q community, it was a very small percentage of society, and now it's 15 to 20% of society. And so you have transgenderism, which at one point was 0.04% of the population, which is now ramping up to be in the teens. And not only that, they're being given the full power of the government as a protected class. And what that does is it allows the 1% to create a percent lower than them, but then vault them into a position in front of them as foot soldiers to protect the power. And so what you understand is that, yes, there are two-spirit people. There are transgender people. We should, again, love your neighbor as you love yourself. But at the same time, the corporations have created this wholly, contrived cultural experience that they're now giving special consideration, special rights, and they're using it to protect themselves. But it's a created thing. In fact, the creative part of it is the culture that is saying this is how 100% of the country thinks. This is how the 1% protects itself by creating this other class of people to then protect its power. Very simply put.
So now let's talk about the whole situation with Target and Bud Light. They're losing all this money. Now Harley Davidson
Sure.
is losing all this money because they partnered with Bud Light.
Oh, that's weird. Okay.
Is that indicative of people finally starting to wake up and vote with their dollar?
I think that because I was looking at the Bud Light thing when that Dylan Mulvaney thing first hit, and what people don't consider is that when a brand does a partnership with an influencer, that they get the entire influencer's idea of beliefs. I guarantee if you go back through Dylan Mulvaney's post and belief system in his social media or her social media as it goes back through time, I can guarantee every corporate narrative was agreed upon wholeheartedly. You will wear a mask. You will protest for BLM. You will get vaccinated. You will make sure that the state supersedes the human being. in every chart of culture that was created, I can guarantee that Dylan Mulvaney was on board for each one of those things. And so to have a company say, well, we're going to partner with it because, and then you hear the person who is behind that PR thing, and they're like, well, we're in a dying brand. We need to reach out to a new aspect of our, we get a new, what do they call it, drinkership, or whoever's consuming their products, that their boomer drinkers are aging out. They got to replace them with new drinkers. They're going to go into, this woke ideology to farm for new customers. And in doing so, the lady who was in charge of that probably shouldn't have said, hey, we're a fratty beer company with dumb commercials. Because what that tells the consumer is, oh shit, that's what they think about me. And now not only that's what my beer of choice thinks about me now, is that they also agree with every single position that this media influencer has. And when that's completely in opposite with how somebody believes, they're just like, I'll drink something else. And so with the Target thing, I'll shop somewhere else. And it's you probably see more things like that, because the companies now, in order to get a good ESG score, a good DEI score, they are going to have to engage in these programs of virtue in order to continue to get funding, because if they're embracing in this move of protecting the singular power of the uniparty, by doing so and showing their solidarity in this, no matter how wacky it gets, they're going to keep getting that money, because it's like having a credit rating. But this is like having have you done enough for inclusion? Yes, check the box, you have. You're going to get funding. You haven't, hate speech. We're going to send our people after you. And so what you're seeing is that people on the other side are like, oh, this is happening at everything now. I can guarantee that it's not just going to be Target. It's not just going to be Bud Light. They're going to start splitting. You'll probably see some kind of crafted division where with one side of the corporate complex will side with either Trump or DeSantis, and have some kind of thing where they go too far, but they're attached to the candidate, just to divide that voter base up. You can see that happening.
Do you think, though, that quite possibly this could lead to some of the collapse of the stranglehold that some of these corporations have upon us, though? Because, I mean, they can only exist if we allow them to exist. Does that make sense?
No, because as long as they continue to go through. So when we were talking on the other stream, where we have the Atlanticists versus the Eurasianists. Okay, and so over here in the Atlanticists, it's progressive. It's everything that's new is to be accepted. It's a linear timeline. And then over here in the Eurasianists, the Russians are going, nope, we're orthodox. Nope, it's family. Nope, it's tradition. It's cyclical time. It's the seasons. It's weather. We're not going to accept any of the things that the West is creating as their reality. And so they're basically staying steadfast because they have control of the breadbasket of the world. And now they're involved in a bloody battle. Whether or not they're working in conjunction with our uniparty here in the United States, probably more than likely they are. But if they're not, they're doing so in a way that the West, in order to continue to drive their hegemony across the world, are engaging in this. You will comply. And as long as you comply and retain our dollar as your base currency, then we'll keep printing. And as long as we can keep this illusion afloat, we'll all be in the game together. And the other side's going, well, we got the BRICS banks, and we're going to try to do it this way. And we'll see, because it seems like the reason that they're doing all of this, again, they create a problem. We have to fix it through printing money. They create a new problem. We have to print more money. Every time they do it, they devalue the currency enough so it can be replaced with the digital one. I mean, the IMF, the International Bank of Settlements, has already decided that by 2025, we will be an international currency. That is digital.
I think that'll all be digitally based.
Yes, and that's the bank that does all the banking for all the central banks of the world. And so if the one bank that they all go to do their business together has decided that, then we're downstream of that. And that will be the ultimate reason that, the government wants you to be masked, they want you to be vaccinated, they want you to go along with every single new cultural thing, is because you have to continue to say yes. And then they're going to say, we got ourselves in a situation, we're going to have to do this new thing with this new money, and you're going to have to accept it. It's going to have a biometric piece that's attached to it. And then who is going to be the people that stand up the fastest against the digital technology with a biometric piece? It's going to be the Christians. It's going to be people of faith. And so that's the reason that the government is now going against Catholics, going against Christians. Eventually they'll go against the Muslims. Eventually they'll go against the Buddhists. They'll finally get down to the Hare Krishnas. But understand that if you have a belief in a God that supersedes the state, then you are an enemy of that state, because you believe in a higher being than the very thing that they are. And you are that enemy.
Does that mean we're all going to be like pod people and like, somebody I used to think was somewhat on the level was Jacques Derrida and like the whole postmodern theory, and like, the way he describes things, it makes it sound very utopian and very blissful, but I think in reality the execution of it is just going to be, we're going to lose our individual autonomy, we're going to be completely subject to the state, like, and I know 1984 is cliche to say, but like, there's going to be some woman on a view screen waking us up, hey, it's time to do push-ups. It almost seems like it would be paramilitary at that point.
I mean, at some point, if the Atlanticists are actually fighting the Eurasianists to have control over the globe, then what they're doing makes sense. What I see that the people who run our side of the globe have already chosen to lose, that instead of being number one on the world, they're agreeing to go to number two to allow China to be number one. And then once China becomes number one, if they're not already there, is you have to out China China. So if China's operating in a totalitarian, surveillance state where you're connected to the grid, if you jaywalk, they can find you right then and there through your WeChat app, and everything's facial recognition. Then the only way to stay up with that pace of progress is you have to do the same thing here. And in order for that to happen, there are so many human rights that we have to choose to give away in order for them to do it. But it seems to be that the way things are morphing into place, that's what's being brought here. Money that is digital, that is biometrically created, you'll become a part of the collective. Instead of the state serving you, you will serve the state. And that's the ultimate erosion of human sovereignty.
I'll tell you something interesting. When I was in LA, I auditioned for a few films. I didn't know what they were until I went into the audition. It was Chinese filmmakers. And I was like,
really?
once I walked out of there, I was like, did they just like map my face? Did they do all this crazy shit that I didn't even realize? Another situation that happened, I went to the Stella Adler Academy in Hollywood, and they had a bunch of people that they said, hey, we're going to audition you for Marvel films. They were looking for the next big Marvel phenomenon, but they were going in, taking pictures of these kids. And I was like, oh, their corporate interests lie in China. I was like, how many of these kids were just face mapped and were just, they're disseminating all their information and whatnot. And, I mean, that's a reality now. I remember the first, I remember the first time I went into the train station, the first language that was spoken was Mandarin. I was like, oh, we're almost in it.
Right. And it's gonna be what I think it's Brett Weinstein who calls it a turnkey totalitarian state, where the cage is being built around us, and you're not going to know it's there till the key turns. And so you see that, unfortunately, that's what we're existing in. It's funny because whether or not the Chinese are mapping you in order to make CGI use for future films, probably. You know, I went into a mattress commercial where I had to dance around with some actress, and then at the end she's snoring, and so I have to raise the bed up so she'll stop snoring. And when I did the audition, I thought it would be fun to like you just put the remote straight up in the air like a lightsaber, and that exact move was in the commercial when they didn't cast me. And so whether or not that was in, because it wasn't in the sides, that was just me going, oh, if I was going to watch this commercial, this would be the most effective thing. Use it like a lightsaber, you know, straight arm it straight up in the sky. She's, you know, you move her up, she stops snoring, commercial ends. And they did it. I was like, ah, you sons of bitches.
And you weren't in the commercial.
Oh, I'm fat. They're not letting me in that. Being a fucking mattress commercial where I can't get the fucking bed to come up because I'm too heavy.
Man, that is crazy. I want to hear about your craziest experience playing hardcore. I want to hear about your craziest experience, like most wild show where it was just completely off the rails.
Sure. My favorite, we had a weekend, PITBOSS 2000 had a weekend in Virginia with No Justice from DC. And Evan from No Justice was super into kind of like Gigi Allen. You know, if you had an opportunity to interact and throw shit, he didn't have a problem with it. And so in that weekend, you know, I shit in a pool. We were, the two bands had broken into this pool that was on the 6th or 7th floor of this hotel. And we were all swimming. And I remember I was looking at Ben WO, and he was like, what are you doing? And I was just staring at him, and this fucking turd popped up behind me. And he's like, lockdown shit in the pool. And everyone freaked out and ran out of the pool. And then Evan from No Justice, Evan from No Justice goes into the pool and picks it up with his hand, not even a touch, just bare hands it, and then throws it off the side of the hotel, 7 floors down on a Fiero, Pontiac Fiero. It explodes, and then we all are just laughing. We run. We're escaping the hotel through the fire exit to get away. And then fast forward to the show that night, we're playing with Nothing Personal, who, for me, it being a pit boss, and you know, Nothing Personal is one of my favorite bands of all time, and they're headlining. And somebody, I don't know who it was, somebody had taken a shit in the urinal at the space we were playing in. Yeah, no, not even in the tank. In the actual urinal. In the piston. And Evan went and picked that up and brought it into the middle of the dance floor and threw it down in the middle of the pit. And so now the room is fucking freaked out. They're like, you can't stand far enough away from this piece of shit. Some people had left, and then the rest was basically in a ring as far away from this turd as they could get. And Nothing Personal. It's like they're kind of just talking. They're like, look, it's going to be fine. They had a box of donuts, and Billy takes all these donuts out, and he makes a ring around the piece of shit. And he goes, as long as no one goes inside of this donut ring, we're going to be fine, and we can keep the show going. All right? They start playing again, and he dives face first, Pete Rose style, through the shit, through the donuts. It's now on his face and on his fucking chest, and now he's chasing people through the audience, and they're running for their lives because they can't believe that the shit that was out on the middle floor is now chasing them. And as far as, you know, memories that are just burned into my brain from hardcore, I mean, that's at the top. And it's so Gigi Allen. But to be a Gigi Allen fan, you're like, well, this is what it was like. That was like a Monday for him.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow. That is absolutely insane. Best bands to play with.
Oh, man. Used to love playing with Cold as Life, All Out War. I mean, we would play a ton of shows with Ringworm, In Cold Blood. Let's see. got to play and with an early version of Municipal Waste right at
Oh
their
wow.
beginning. Yeah, in Richmond. Um,
Okay.
yeah, it was cool. I remember that. I remember that show because we showed up. We showed up to unload in front of the venue at Richmond, and we're gears going out, and I'm just standing there because I'm a singer. I don't have to move shit, and so these dudes, like 4 or 5 dudes, ride up on BMX bikes, and they're all in their 20s. They're all just like hardcore dudes, and they all roll up on their bikes together, and they kind of make a line in front of us. And I'm like, "What are you guys?" And the one guy goes, "We're the Snakes," and all 5 of them at the same time went. So, which in my mind is the funniest thing ever. That they're
It's
an
like some war
adult,
shit.
yeah, but they're an adult BMX bike hangout gang that also has a fucking hand sign, and they all did the Snakes at the same time, like they had fucking practiced it.
Oh,
So that's phenomenal.
oh my god. Oh man, that pales in just about anything North Carolina scene wise. I just heard about the craziest shows up in Cleveland, and like
Oh, it's
I
great.
always think of like Bad Luck 13 Riot Extravaganza. I mean, they're not Cleveland, but
Yeah.
that just chaos and insanity. I'm like, where did that go? Where or because it was so rampant like during the 80s and whatnot, and
Yes.
I think Cleveland really did their best at emulating that and even taking it to the next level.
I mean, I still have glass in my leg from throwing a guy through a speaker um, at a ringworm show and watching Tony Erba pick up a plastic cross and start fucking hitting somebody in the head with it. And it's just, the fact that I still have a scar and the glass is still in my leg, it goes right to that show. It's like I know exactly what I was doing. And it was just in that time where you were just raging. It was just the 90s. Like we would watch videos out of Philly for what like Bad Luck was doing at their shows. And I remember like one of the funniest videos I ever saw is like they're playing pandemonium. There's fucking tables going everywhere. The fireworks are going off. Somebody's got a. If you see it's with the disco ball, and the disco
Yeah.
ball is in the back of the room, and somebody throws it, and then like we throw a basketball, it kind of curves, and so you see this video, and it comes through, and sometimes just randomly walking out of the side stage and gets drilled in the head with it.
Oh.
On top of that, to watch the shows that they did when they had that Halloween party, got busted up, and they were on the news. It's like Jason Goldberg tattooed me. I sang on the Bad Luck 13 albums. It's like to be able to be involved with that at any level was like one of those pinnacle moments.
Oh, surely. Wow, that is absolutely insane. I mean, dude, great, just rich stories, man. Let's talk a little bit more about stand-up comedy. Like,
Yeah,
what made you take the plunge into stand-up comedy?
I just decided that I was not doing anything. I was not doing anything creatively. I wasn't in a band. I had not yet started PC Death Squad. And so I said, "Oh, I'm going to go down and try an open mic at the La Jolla Comedy Store." And it took me about a month to finally have the nerve to put my name on the list and actually go up. I did 2 minutes and 40 seconds. I got one laugh. It was awful. And then that was it. And then I was off to the races with it. And it was like, and it's what they don't tell you when you start doing stand up, because it's always like you're hanging with comedians. What does it mean to be a comedian? Comics do this, and this is your writing process. It does this. It's like you ultimately get to the point where you're like, in the same way where you and I are hardcore kids, because that's what we grew up on. I'm metal. That's what I grew up on. A punk rock. That's what I grew up on. I'm funny. I've always been funny. And some people get trapped into this. What's it to be a comic? What's it to be a comedian? What's it to be in the scene? Whenever it comes down to, it's like, are you funny? Do you believe that you're funny? In the same way that if you're in a band, you have a guitar, is it in tune? Then yes, then you're going to sound good. If you're funny and you're confident and you know you're going to crush, then you will. I know how all this shit works. And that's just my brain tinkering. I know how to make music. I know how to make hardcore. I know how to do stand up. It's like just these various skill sets that, you know, it just takes a while to like break down. And it took a lot of research to figure out like when I would listen to Bill Burr talk about Dave Chappelle, I mean, you're looking at Dave Chappelle as a musician. And you listen, you can close your eyes and listen to Bill Burr, hit the register of what he's saying, that what he is doing is music. It is the punk rock.
Sure.
And now when I kind of put that together, I was like, oh, okay, I totally understand that.
Yeah,
I
there's
totally get it.
levels to it. There's, you know, there's beats to it. And, you know,
Absolutely.
I've done some I'm about to embark on doing a music video, and it's like, you know, you do things in sync with the music essentially. And even with script writing, I did, you know, I we would listen to music, and then we would kind of like jam with the music and jive with the music and be like, here's the line, you know, da 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 da. And then, you know,
Hmm.
everything is it's like a symphony almost.
It's almost like if you're, what do they say? All language is hypnotism. That you have the ability. Those people who are, you know, whether you're doing stand up and you are engaging with a crowd and you are anchoring, like you are achieving a connection with an audience, and then once you've anchored that connection, you're ramping up it. You're ramping up the connection. You're getting their energy a little bit bigger than they were. Now you've set a new baseline. You've re-anchored the audience. You've brought them up to an even bigger level to be funnier. The jokes are going to hit harder. And that's no different than the anchoring you would do in a script where you're putting in foreshadowing for things that are going to come later. Or if you're making music and you understand that this is the beat that we're on and everybody's on this beat. And if you're a hypnotist, you start working before your audience knows that you are, because you've aligned your breathing with the room. And when you've aligned that breathing, the audience doesn't know that you've done that. But once you're in that rhythm and you're all in that rhythm, they don't know that they're in that rhythm. And so it's interesting that we're able to do those very things through all mediums, through filmmaking, through music, and through stand up.
Yeah, definitely, man. Th- when when I started to be able to grasp that concept, it brought my creative process to another level, you know. And you know, even doing this podcast, I treat it as though it were a hardcore band. You know,
That's
I'm
awesome.
like I take all the ethics and all the know-how and stuff that I've been able to glean from hardcore, and I try to incorporate it into this, you know. And granted, I may have some guests sometimes that aren't hardcore musicians, you know, but like,
Hmm.
you know, I'm having somebody that's an openly gay country musician on
That's
sometime
great.
soon. But still I try to maintain that same ethos, and, you know, just keep it real, keep it raw. And that's, you know, a lot of people say like hardcore. There's a meme. I don't know if you've seen this meme before, but it's like my goals, and then it shows a pit and it says hardcore, and then you see like the other end of the pit. And I'm like, I don't think that that's necessarily true. I mean, you look at like, let's take for example Elgin James from Righteous Jams,
Sure.
454 Big Block. Like, he's a director now. He's doing
Right.
big television series, you know. Did hardcore
Hmm.
stop him from achieving any of his goals? No, it probably took him to another level.
Right. Well, the reason that he was able to be so successful in his film endeavors as well as his musical endeavors is because at the root of who he is, he's a successful person. That he understands himself and the process. He's probably brutally honest with himself in all things, and then all that ultimately, you know, improves himself in all of those levels in order to be able to do that. I mean, for him to be able to get that, what that he did the Mayan spinoff, you know,
Right.
from Sons of Anarchy. I mean, that's like unfathomable. And
Right.
that's, you know, and as unfathomable as you're like, oh, this hardcore kid, you know, makes this series that the guy who's the guy from Tim and Eric was in what, Ink and Dagger?
Heidecker?
Yeah,
Yeah.
wasn't he in, like,
Oh, was
he
he
was like in a
in
hardcore.
Dagger?
I want to say he was in Ink and Dagger. He was in one of those Philly bands, and that or the dude or like the Grillo brothers. own Grillo's Pickles. It's like, it's amazing that like
Yeah.
these dudes that are involved in the scene now have thriving businesses, thriving careers. You know, Hatebreed's still going at it. They're still crushing. Ringworm's
Yeah.
still touring. Terror is still touring. All the New
Yeah.
York bands are still going at it. It's awesome. And it's cool to see. You know, like when you were talking offline, you're like, you know, is there anything you don't want to talk about? And I'm like, you know, to be honest, I only engage in things that I love, that I like. So my Instagram feed is, it's all hard. You know, it's like my Instagram. If you go, you know, like you go to that the spyglass or the looking glass thing where it gives like
Yeah.
all the stuff you can discover. All mine's like fights, hardcore, European sluts, and like zit popping videos, and like then dogs
What?
and cats. Like that's all I'm using this one platform for. And they know me. They're like, oh, this is what he wants. It's that. You know, slut, funny cat video. This is how you make a recipe for smash burgers. Here's a fight. This guy's getting shot at a bank. Here's a fucking zit. And I'm happy. This is exactly what I want. Somewhere in my lizard brain wants that kind of shit. And there's Instagram going, there it is.
Here it is. Here it is. You know,
Yep.
I've actually been trying to maintain a celibate path. And, you know, I used to have like big booty Latina girls in there like all the time. I'm like, oh my God, this is my shit, you know? But then, like, you know, I've been trying to stay on the spiritual path, been trying to stay on the celibate path. And I'm like, no, no, I don't want to see this. Yes, I want to see this, but no, 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 you know, and I have to keep clicking, you know, like hide this from the algorithm, hide this from the algorithm. No, no, I don't want to see this. And, you know, it's it's just
What are you
so
doing? What are you doing to fill what the energy you used to put into getting laid? Now that you're not doing that, what are you now replacing it with?
creative projects. I mean,
Sure.
you
So
know,
that's more
it's
important to you. It's more fulfilling.
absolutely.
Right.
Well, because if you have no foundation, you have no and you know, I did a podcast interview where I was just like, I always wanted to have adventures, you know, and I did my
Yeah.
hedonistic stuff when I was back in LA. You know, I got to bang some of my favorite porn stars ever,
That's
you know. Never did I think that would happen in my mind. I'm like,
yeah.
man, I would love to meet this girl and just, you know, and
Yeah. And you did. You pulled that
it
off.
manifested in my mind and I made it happen, you know, and I was like,
That's
this
awesome.
is beautiful, you know, and like, I had a fucking foursome. Like it was great. Like I was like, this is so awesome, you know. Like I was living like I was in a hip hop video for like you know a few
Sure.
months, and I was like, this is great, you know. Now it's like if I feel as though, and I'm sure you can attest to this too. If you don't have a good life foundation, if you don't have a good like you know tapestry of experiences and things like that, it's all for naught. And you'll never
Right.
have any of those experiences that you really want to have. And so there's a lot of self-sacrifice that's involved in that. Yeah, you know, I'm kind of, you know, being in my monk status again, but you know, I'm able to do this podcast. I did Hell's Heart Merch Co. You know, I'm
Right.
directing a music video. I started a charity. You know, like I'm like, and that to me is absolutely more satiating than any broad would be any time of the
Right.
day. You know,
Yeah.
maybe
It's where
sometimes, but you know,
it's very fleeting, and it's not it's gratifying in the moment, but I would imagine over time it takes more from you than it gives you.
takes more from you, and simultaneously, it's harder to attain. You know, because you know some of those things take finances or whatever, but you know
Oh, sure.
it's harder to attain when you're not focused on your purpose.
Right, right. And that's funny. Into the porn world, I got nominated for an AVN for for music in a movie. My buddy did a movie with Stormy Daniels, and he's like, "Oh, I want PC Death Squad to be in this porno," and I was like, "Fuck yeah, you do." And so Stephanie Clifford bought me a plane ticket to fly from Texas to San Diego, where I got my band, and we went to LA to this house where they're shooting this porno movie, and it's like we watch the whole thing go down, and we do our scenes, and then at the end, it was what was a real trip was that we're standing outside, and Roxy DeVille was in the movie, and she's like, and I was like, "Oh, can I get a picture?" And she's like, "Yeah, that's cool." And she goes, you know what's weird? You remind me of the singer of PitBoss 2000.
What?
How fucking weird is that in a
Insane.
simulation rate, like just totally random thing? And you're like, of all of these things to align in this situation, you know, you're just like, well, this is what's happening. Fuck yeah.
How did you feel about that? Were you just like, let me tell
Yeah,
you
it's
something?
I'm just completely blown. I mean, the things, serendipitous things happen like that all the time. And if you are aware of them and you're looking for the pattern of it, then, what you are looking for, you will ultimately see. And so in that sense, in that connective way, that we should, to go even further into my philosophy of simplicity is removing words from words that I no longer use. I don't use try and want. The very act of wanting. I don't know if this goes into Hare Krishna, but the act of wanting is a complete rejection of the ever present now. That
Present.
everything that you have access to that is part of your life is supposed to be there in its entirety, and your choice to accept it in a gracious way and act as a giving spirit is you or your choice to exist in. But all of that is there. The idea of wanting is saying, you know what, all of this is here and I know it, but you know what would be better? And then you miss the point,
Yeah. Yeah, you're
you
not
know.
living in the moment. You're not seizing the day, so to speak.
It's a good way to think of it. Yeah, I mean, you're just not being present, in your life. And so in that,
I
that's
always
the
use
ultimate disorder that you could be in.
I always use Yoda as an example where he's like, never his mind on where he was,
Right?
what he was doing, like
Yeah.
the
Or do
future,
not. Yeah, do not. There is no try. You
Totally,
know.
man. It's sage like
I got
wisdom, and
I got my hair cut last week. I didn't try to get my hair cut. I got my hair cut. I mowed
yeah,
my lawn today. I didn't try to mow my lawn. I mowed
you
my
just did
lawn.
it.
I just did it. And so
Who,
I'm funny, so I'm going to do stand up. I know how to
who,
write music, so I'm going to make an album. You know what I
when
mean?
one of
It's
these
like,
girls that was involved in this quartetto, when she threw on Sleep's Dope Smoker, I was like, get the fuck out of here. I would have never thought you to be like a
right.
doom metal fan. She does not look like that at all.
That's funny. Well,
Lena
and in that
Paul,
in that
you know who
sense,
she is?
say that again.
Lena Paul, she's like newer.
No, I'm not familiar. But it's like at the
Oh,
same time,
okay.
it's like if I was in a situation with a person that I didn't know, and they had some also, and mind you, when I had that experience with Roxy DeVille, I wasn't as conspiratorially minded as I am now. But if that same thing was to happen now, I'd be like, the fucking Fed sent her. I know it.
Man.
So if all of a sudden you're with some hot girl that's into doom metal, okay, you've been set up.
Oh,
That's
man.
one way. That's one way to think of it. You'd be like, "Oh, this is totally cool. What a random thing that's happening."
Yeah,
Or, or let's see what this guy's into.
maybe. God, I hope not. I mean, I know I'm probably on a few lists here and there, but it's God, I would hate to think of it like that. I just thought of it as being providential, like
It's
that was something I had not planned. She's like, "Hey, I got my two girlfriends. You want to meet them?" And I was like,
of
"Yeah."
course I did.
It's like, of
Yeah,
course,
yeah. So it's
So
great.
yeah, no, it's beautiful. And now that we're talking about films, I don't know if you're a film guy. I like some films.
Sure.
What do you get into film? Do you get into streaming content? Do you get into anything like that?
I watch mostly YouTube and Amazon Prime stuff that I get on there, and then those like I have a Samsung TV, so that there's those channels that you get where it's like the murder channel or the criminal channel. I could watch that shit all day. I don't know what it is. There's a certain segment of the population that likes 60-minute stories that's about justice or some kind of putting the dots together. There's a
Yeah.
certain percentage of society that loves that shit. And I'm one of those people. I can watch true crime stuff all day. But I love like we just started watching that show From that's on MGM Plus.
I'm familiar.
Yeah, it's like Lost, and it's
Okay.
in fact the main actor is Walt's dad, who is also in Oz. That dude.
Okay. I don't.
Remember the dude in
You
the
know, I never watched
wheelchair?
Oz, and I watched the first episode of Lost, and when they got ate by the dinosaurs, I was like, nah, I'm out.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. And that's so it's like if you like that kind of weird mystery shit like I did, this show is exactly that. And so my wife and I are watching that.
What's
They
it
just
about?
finished halfway. It's about this uh, basically this family's driving. There's a tree in the road, and then they turn around and go the other way, and then they just end up in this circle. They can't get out of it, and so they end up in this town. And in the town, if you can be out during the day, but as soon as the nighttime comes, there are these people who also live in this universe that are there to destroy you. And so basically, all of these people show up in the town. They show up from all over the United States. They all see the tree, and then they all go in a loop, and they all end up in the town. And so, and that's basically the story, and how in the
I'm gonna have
macro,
to
that's
check
kind
this
of what
out
it is.
now.
It's pretty
Mando
cool.
recommended Man in the High Castle to me. Did you watch that one?
It's probably a true story, probably a documentary. I'm a huge Philip K. Dick fan,
Yeah.
and basically, I believe the idea of that would be um, we're experiencing it, where instead of the flag being celebrated, it's being hated upon. Instead of the flag being waved proudly, it's being replaced by a different flag. And that happens for so long, and the media gets created around it, that the American flag goes by the wayside, that Nazi Germany just is brought in through culture itself. I believe that's what Man in the High Castle is about.
Yeah, it's like an alternate reality as to what like the Nazis won the war, and they're the driving force in the world at this point. And yeah, I've never watched it, but I do like Philip K. Dick. I mean, I love Scanner Darkly. I love Total
Sure.
Recall. Or We Can Remember It for You Wholesale. Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Blade Runner.
Right.
So I've been very curious to check it out, and I'm probably going to do that.
I have his Exegesis book that I would highly suggest that everyone read. Philip K. Dick's
Messages.
Exegesis. Yeah,
Okay, I'm not familiar with that one.
it's about what happened to him when he opened somebody knocked on his door and he opened the door, and the person on the other side of the door had a pendant that flashed in his eyes, and when he saw it, he was exposed to reality as he understands it now. And he describes this, how he has his understanding and how all of his ideas were given to him in this flash.
It's almost like psilocybin mushrooms or like
Very,
DMT or
very
something.
much so. Well, it's like, how do you, like there's like comics who sit in their notebook and they don't have a joke to think of, and they just free write whatever's in their mind or their heart. They're just putting out, and they're just telling the truth in their notebook, and they might get a nugget in there that they can start mining, and they can create something from it. And me, what I do is I just go about my day, and things happen, and because I've experienced them and I know how to tell a story, that I know how to turn a random thing that happened to me into minutes. Or I hear, or maybe just a joke arrives in its entirety in my brain, beginning to end, and it just shows up. And so I just understand that, and I'm like, that's how my creative process works. And so instead of being, I used to be like, oh, I've got a new 15 minutes. My 30 is great. I need a better 15 to close with so I can headline, and being freaked out that these minutes were never going to come again. When in reality, I just have to be present and paying attention, and the comedy will just show up because it's always just shown up. My riffs, the way I write music, I'll spill the tea on this shit. For me, for when I write music, uh, whenever I go buy something, I keep the receipt, and on the receipt is a series of numbers that's anywhere between 16 and 30 digits, and I can go through that number and I can find riffs. I've written full albums off of one receipt.
Receipt paper.
That's it. The price of something 10019. 1001. And then you're like, well, how does that sound? Well, how does it sound like this bed? How does it sound backwards? Instead of going to 9, you go to the 4 on A. Instead of the 1, you're at the 8. It's all, you're playing around with that. And that was my process for writing music, as weird as
That
it
is
is.
incredible.
But that's what works for me. Because when I write music, it all just sounds like PITBOSS. Because that's when I write, it just sounds like that. I can't undo it. And that's just the weird thing. That even as my stuff that I've written is maybe more complex, it's more thrash. At the root, it's still Cleveland. It's still in that D standard, style of hardcore that we all grew up with.
Yeah, indeed. Well, once again, John Tole, thank you again so much for showing, man.
No,
yeah,
I appreciate it.
Dude, I need to get you a shirt too. So hang out
I
for
would
a
love
few
one.
minutes. I'm gonna get you some gonna get some contact info from you and get you some merch and all that. And
Awesome.
I would definitely love to have you back, man. This has been a really
I would love
enlightening
to.
conversation.
Oh, thank you
Dude.
so much. Yeah, I would absolutely. Thank you so much for the shirt too. I'll send you some PC
Dude.
Death Squad stuff as well in trade.
Hell yeah! And if you got some PITBOSS stuff too.
I might have. What size are you? You look like a medium.
Medium. Yeah.
I guessed it. Fuck yeah, you are.
You got it,
good.
man. What
All
are
right,
you like?
I got that.
2X, 3X?
2X. I'm a 2X right now.
I called it. All
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
man. Well, dude, thank you so much. And yeah, just hang out for a few minutes and we'll chop it up there. And
Awesome,
again,
man.
everybody, thank you so much for joining Mr. John Toll and myself on TNF Podcast. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and follow me on Rumble and do all the good stuff as far as merchandise is concerned. And please support him in all his endeavors. He is a prisoner of the Jinping Biden regime. And so he needs all the help he can get. And let's all collaborate. Let's all do the thing, man. It's all love. So thank you so much, sir.
Awesome. Peace, brother. Thank you so much. God bless.
Peace. All right.